Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive.
Oh.
You guys really wanted to know more about Gray's biopsychological theory of personality.
Mm-hmm.
So we are going to do just that. We'll take a close look at why
Yeah.
some people can't resist that new spicy thing,
Mm-hmm.
while others, stick to the same old, same old.
Yeah. Yeah.
To help us figure all this out, we've got a stack of academic papers,
Okay.
a bunch of overviews of personality psychology, and
Cool.
even a really interesting blog post, all to
Nice.
help us really get a grasp on this theory and see how it can be helpful in our everyday lives.
Awesome.
So to get us started, can you give us like a quick rundown on what exactly Gray's biopsychological theory is all about?
You bet. So, what's really cool about Gray's theory is how it connects our personalities to specific systems in our brains.
Hmm.
It goes way deeper than just saying, oh, I'm an extrovert or I'm an introvert.
Right.
It actually looks at the biological reasons behind why we might love a wild party
Mm-hmm.
or why we'd rather just chill at home with a good book.
Okay, so we're talking about like
Yeah.
how our brains are literally wired
Literally
for
wild.
certain personality traits.
Exactly.
That's so cool. So how does that actually work? Like,
Okay, so
what's going on in our brains?
basically, Gray said that we've got these three main systems that are always working inside us.
Okay.
The Behavioral Inhibition System, or BIS,
Okay.
the Behavioral Activation System, which is BAS,
Gotcha.
and then the Fight-Flight-Freeze System, which is FFFS.
Wow. Okay. A lot of acronyms to keep track of.
Well, you know, right? But they're all super important because each system reacts differently to the stuff we encounter every day,
Hmm.
shaping how we handle rewards and punishments and even threats.
Like our brains are constantly assessing the situation and figuring out how to respond.
Exactly.
So let's break this down a bit. Let's start with this BIS.
Yeah.
What is this behavioral inhibition system all about?
All right, so think of the BIS as like your brain's warning system.
Okay.
It's always on the lookout for anything that could be a threat or something that might be unpleasant.
Like a danger signal.
Yeah, basically. And when it picks up on something risky, it triggers those feelings of anxiety and tells us to avoid the situation.
Oh, so like when you're about to give a big presentation
Yes.
and your palms start sweating and you feel that nervous energy,
Exactly.
that's the BIS kicking in telling you to run for the hills.
Pretty much. And someone with a really sensitive BIS might find themselves hitting the brakes all the time.
Hmm.
Hesitant to try new things or put themselves out there because they're always worried about something bad happening.
So they're always playing it safe.
Yeah, you could say that.
Interesting. So a strong BIS could mean you're more likely to be anxious in general.
It can definitely contribute to that. And what's really fascinating is that there's actually a physiological connection, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Gray linked the BIS to a specific part of the brain called the septohippocampal system,
Okay.
which is involved in processing fear and anxiety.
Mm.
And research has even shown that the size of certain brain regions, like the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex,
I've heard of those.
might be linked to how anxious someone is.
So it's like a real physical difference in the brain that can affect your personality.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, so let's move on to the BAS now. This one sounds a bit more,
Fun.
a bit more fun.
It is. The BAS is all about chasing those good feelings and rewards. It pushes us to try new things, be optimistic, and basically just get excited about life.
I like the sound of that. So it's like the opposite of the BIS.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
You could think of it as your brain's go-for-it signal.
Okay, so someone with a strong BAS is probably like
Yeah.
the life of the party,
Totally.
always up for an adventure,
Yep.
and the first one to try the new crazy food truck.
Exactly. And their brain is actually rewarding them for it.
How so?
Well, the BAS is closely tied to the brain's reward pathways
Okay.
and the release of dopamine, which is the neurotransmitter that makes us feel good.
Ah, the feel-good chemical.
Right. So that rush of happiness you get when you achieve something.
Yeah.
That's the BAS and dopamine working their magic.
So people with a stronger BAS are basically driven by those positive feelings.
Yeah, they're motivated by those rewards.
It's less about avoiding the bad stuff
Yeah,
and more about seeking out the good stuff.
exactly.
Gotcha. And there's research to back this up.
Oh, yeah. Studies have shown that people with a really active BAS might actually learn better through rewards than through punishment.
That makes sense.
Right.
Okay, so we've got the BS, which is like proceed with caution,
Yeah.
and the BAS, which is like go for it.
Uh-huh.
So what about this fight, flight, freeze system? The FFFS.
Right.
Where does that primal instinct fit into all of this?
So the FFFS is basically our hardwired survival mechanism. It's
Yeah.
that immediate response to danger that we have,
Okay.
like that split-second decision maker that helps us react to threats.
Like fight back, run away, or just freeze up?
Exactly. Think about that feeling you get when you slam on your brakes to avoid an accident.
Oh, yeah.
That's your FFFS taking over.
It's pure instinct. Wow. So even though we're not running from saber-toothed tigers anymore,
Right.
that FFFS is still kicking in during those high-stress moments.
Absolutely. The threats we face today might be different,
Right.
but that primal response is still a part of us.
It's in our biology.
Yep.
This is
That's
incredible.
pretty amazing, right?
But how does all this actually play out in real life?
That's a great question.
Like it's fascinating to learn about these systems, but can we actually use this information
Yeah,
to understand ourselves and other people better?
absolutely. There are actually assessments like the BizBus questionnaire
Okay.
that can help you figure out your own tendencies.
Huh. So we could actually see if our own BizBS or BibS is more dominant,
You got it.
and then use that knowledge to
Yeah,
manage anxiety or understand what motivates us.
exactly. Understanding your own BizBus tendencies can be like having a user manual for your personality.
I like that. A user manual for your personality.
Right. But we're just scratching the surface here. In the next part of our deep dive, we're going to explore what can happen when these systems go a little haywire.
Ooh, interesting.
And we'll talk about how they influence other personality traits and how understanding all of this can lead to a happier, more fulfilling life.
Can't wait. This has already been so insightful. Stay tuned, everyone, because we're just getting started.
Welcome back to our deep dive on Gray's biopsychological theory of personality.
It's pretty wild to think about those BIS and BIS tendencies playing out in real life.
Right.
Like you were saying before the break, sometimes you have these big aha moments
Totally.
when you start to see the patterns. I know I have.
Yeah.
Like I always thought I was just a total introvert who loves quiet nights at home.
Yeah.
But now I'm wondering if maybe my BIS is a bit more dominant than I realized.
Could be. It definitely makes you think.
It does. But I'm curious, can having a really strong BIS or BIS actually work against us?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Like are there downsides to these systems?
For sure. While a healthy BIS helps us navigate risk,
And a strong BAS keeps us motivated and engaged.
yeah.
Too much of either one can lead to some challenges.
So it's like anything else.
I believe.
A little bit can be great.
Yeah.
But too much can throw things out of balance.
Exactly.
So let's start with the BIS. What happens when that warning system in our brain is basically stuck in the on position?
Okay, so imagine someone who's constantly worried about messing up
Oh, yeah.
to the point that they won't try anything new.
I know people like that.
Right, or someone who's so afraid of what other people think that they just isolate themselves and miss out on connections and experiences.
It's sad.
It is, and that's the downside of an overly sensitive BIS.
It can really hold you back. Yeah, it can lead to chronic anxiety and fear and this pattern of avoidance that makes their world smaller and smaller.
It's like they're always bracing for the worst.
Right. They never really let themselves relax and enjoy things.
And what's even worse is that by avoiding things that make you anxious,
Yeah.
you're actually just reinforcing those fears.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like you're never giving yourself a chance to learn that it's not as scary as your BIS is telling you.
So it's this vicious cycle.
Totally.
You avoid the thing that makes you anxious,
Uh-huh.
and then you become even more anxious the next time you face it.
Exactly. It's tough to break free from that.
So what can you do?
Well, the good news is that there are ways to manage an overactive BIS.
Okay,
Therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT
I've heard of that.
can be super helpful.
How so?
Well, CBT teaches people to challenge those anxious thoughts, reframe their perspectives,
Okay.
and gradually expose themselves to the things they fear.
So it's like slowly dipping your toes in the water instead of jumping straight into the deep end.
Exactly. It's all about learning to manage that internal alarm system.
Instead of letting it control your life.
Right.
I like that. It's like CBT is that friend who gently pushes you out of your comfort zone.
I love that analogy.
It helps you see that maybe things aren't as scary as your BIS is making them out to be.
Yeah, and it highlights that we don't have to be ruled by our BIS.
Right. We have the power to change those patterns.
We do. With the right tools and support, we can learn to quiet down that alarm system and start embracing new experiences.
That's encouraging.
It is.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential downsides of a supersensitive BIS.
Right.
Now, what about the BAS? We've talked about how a strong BAS can make people more impulsive and thrill-seeking,
Uh,
but can that ever backfire?
oh, absolutely. While a healthy BAS keeps us motivated and engaged,
Right.
an overactive one can lead to this constant craving for stimulation and reward,
Mm.
even if it means taking unnecessary risks.
So like those extreme sports enthusiasts
Yes,
who push things to the limit without thinking about the consequence.
exactly. Or someone who jumps headfirst into a new project or a new relationship with tons of enthusiasm,
Yeah.
but then loses interest really quickly.
It's like they're always chasing that dopamine rush.
Right.
Yeah.
They need that constant hit of
And
excitement.
so that can be a problem.
It can. It can lead to impulsive decisions, trouble sticking to long-term goals, and even recklessness in some cases.
So how do you find that balance?
Yeah.
Like between enjoying those thrills,
Uh-huh.
but not going overboard.
It's a good question.
Is it even possible to manage an overactive BAS?
It is. It's all about learning to harness that energy and channel it in a positive direction.
Okay.
This might mean setting realistic goals,
Right.
breaking down big tasks into smaller steps,
Gotcha.
and finding healthy ways to satisfy that need for novelty and excitement.
So instead of impulsively booking a flight to a random country,
Yeah.
maybe try exploring a new neighborhood in your own city.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that seeking professional help can be really valuable too.
Okay.
Therapists can teach people with an overactive BAS how to develop self-control,
Mm-hmm.
manage those impulses, and make more thoughtful decisions.
So it's not about changing who you are.
Right.
It's about learning to manage those impulses in a healthier way.
Exactly.
This all makes so much sense. It really shows how understanding our BIS and BIS tendencies is crucial to understanding our personalities as a whole.
Absolutely.
But I'm also wondering, how does this all relate to those more general personality traits,
Yeah.
like introversion and extroversion?
Mm.
Are those connected to the BIS and BAS?
You bet they are. Remember how we talked about the BIS being linked to anxiety and avoidance?
Yeah.
Well, those tendencies often go hand in hand with introversion.
So introverts might be more sensitive to stimulation
Exactly.
and find things like big social gatherings or loud environments really draining.
Right. Their BIS might be going off in those situations.
Telling them to retreat and recharge.
Exactly. It's not that they're being antisocial. They're
Mhm.
just listening to their internal cues and honoring their need for some downtime.
Makes sense. And what about extroverts? Would their BAS be more dominant in those scenarios?
Absolutely. Extroverts thrive on social interaction stimulation, new experiences.
Right.
They get energized by being around people and doing exciting things. Their BAS is probably firing on all cylinders.
Motivating them to seek out those rewarding encounters.
Exactly. It's like their internal reward system is fueled by connection and novelty.
So Gray's theory basically offers a biological explanation
Uh-huh.
for why some people are drawn to quiet nights in,
Yeah.
while others are out there painting the town red.
It's not just personal preference.
Mhm.
These underlying systems play a role in shaping those inclinations.
It's like Gray's theory is giving us a glimpse into the inner workings of our personalities,
Yeah.
revealing those biological mechanisms that make us who we are.
I like that.
But how did Gray actually come up with this theory?
Oh, that's a great question.
Was it like a sudden eureka moment? Or was it based on previous research?
Well, Gray's theory didn't just come out of nowhere. It was
Wow.
really influenced by earlier work in personality psychology,
Like whose work?
especially the theories of Hans Eysenck.
Eysenck. Wasn't he the one who came up with the PEN model of personality?
Yes. You know, the one focusing on traits like extroversion and neuroticism?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember learning about that.
Eysenck was a real pioneer in the field.
Hmm.
And he was one of the first to suggest that personality traits were actually rooted in biological differences,
Interesting.
specifically in the brain's arousal system.
Okay.
He believed that introverts have higher baseline levels of arousal.
So they're more sensitive to external stimulation.
Exactly. While extroverts have lower levels and need more stimulation to feel energized.
So Gray took that idea and kind of expanded on it.
You got it. Gray agreed that biology was key.
Okay.
But he felt that Eysenck's model didn't fully explain how our brains respond to rewards and punishments. That's where the BIS and BAS came in.
Adding another layer to our understanding of personality.
Exactly.
It's incredible to think about how these scientific discoveries can totally change our perspective.
Right.
It's like we're constantly learning new things about ourselves and how our minds work.
It's pretty amazing.
It really is. It's
Yeah.
like having a new lens to view human behavior through.
Yeah, I agree. It's a powerful reminder that personality isn't just some abstract concept.
Hmm.
It's deeply connected to our biology and
Mm.
influenced by these complex systems in our
And
brains.
understanding these systems
Yeah,
can help us navigate our own lives and
yeah,
build stronger relationships.
absolutely.
We've covered so much ground already.
We have.
We've explored the BIS and the BAS,
Huh?
talked about their potential downsides,
Yeah.
and even how they relate to those classic personality traits like introversion and extroversion.
It's been a great discussion.
It has. But before we wrap things up, I want to pause for a moment
Okay.
and ask you a question.
Sure.
Think about your own experiences for a second.
Okay.
Have you noticed any patterns in your behavior
Hmm.
that you think might be related to your BIS or BAS?
Yeah. Have you ever found yourself saying yes to every opportunity that comes your way,
Oh, yeah.
even if it stretches you a bit thin?
Guilty as charged.
Or maybe you're someone who tends to overthink every decision,
Yeah,
agonizing over every possible outcome.
I do that too.
It's pretty common.
Yeah.
So take a moment to reflect on how these systems might be influencing your own life.
That's a good exercise.
It is. And in the final part of our deep dive,
Oh?
we'll explore this further and talk about how you can use this knowledge to create a more balanced and fulfilling life.
Welcome back to the deep dive, everyone. I don't know about you, but after thinking about my own BIS and BAS tendencies,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm seeing my actions in a whole new light.
It's really eye-opening, isn't it?
It is. So we've talked about the BIS and the BIS and how they can impact so many things,
Mm-hmm.
from how we react to stress to who we like to hang out with.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, is there like an ideal balance between these two systems?
That's a great question.
Is it possible to find that sweet spot where we're not always hitting the brakes or slamming on the gas?
Well, the good news is that we can actually learn to modulate those responses. Yeah, it's not about trying to get rid of one system or the other,
Okay.
because both the BIS and the BAS are important.
Right. They each have their purpose.
Exactly. It's more about developing self-awareness and finding strategies to create a healthier equilibrium.
So it's about finding that balance between caution and courage,
Yeah.
being able to think things through,
Uh-huh.
but not letting fear or impulsivity take over.
Exactly. It's like becoming the master of your own internal control panel.
I like that.
Recognizing when your BIS or BAS might be trying to take charge,
Yeah, yeah.
and then making conscious choices to steer yourself in the right direction.
It makes me think about mindfulness practices.
Hmm.
Could those be helpful here?
Absolutely. Being more mindful of your thoughts and feelings in the moment can help you catch those times when your BIS is starting to spiral into worry,
Yeah.
or when your BIS is pushing you toward a risky decision.
So it's like you're hitting the pause button,
Right.
giving yourself a chance to assess the situation before you just react automatically.
Exactly. Mindfulness can be a powerful tool.
What about therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT?
Oh, yeah. CBT can be super helpful too.
How so?
Well, it can help you rewire those automatic BIS and BAS responses by challenging those unhelpful thought patterns that fuel anxiety or impulsivity.
Okay, so for example.
So with CBT, you learn to identify those negative what-if thoughts that trigger the BIS.
Right.
Or those overly optimistic expectations that might lead to BAS-driven recklessness.
So it's not about changing who you are.
Right.
It's more about learning how to manage those internal impulses in a healthier way.
Exactly. It's like learning to work with your BIS and BS instead of letting them row show.
I love that. So we've talked about how we can work with our BIS and BAS internally.
Uh-huh.
But what about the role of our environment?
Ooh, good point.
Does that play a role in how these systems express themselves?
Absolutely. Our environment can have a huge impact on how our BIS and BAS operate.
How so?
Well, think about it. If you're constantly surrounded by stress and uncertainty.
Your BIS is going to be on high alert,
Yeah, that makes sense.
making you more anxious and more likely to avoid things.
It's like your environment is constantly sending signals to your BIS saying, watch out, danger.
Exactly. But on the flip side, if you're in an environment that encourages exploration,
Okay.
rewards effort, and celebrates creativity,
Yeah.
your BIS is going to thrive.
Mm.
You'll feel more motivated, more optimistic, and more eager to engage with the world around you.
So creating an environment that supports that healthy balance between the BIS and the BIS is really important.
It is. It's about setting yourself up for success both internally and externally.
So this might involve things like
Yeah.
setting boundaries to limit stress,
Right.
surrounding yourself with supportive people,
Yeah.
and seeking out activities that bring you joy.
Exactly. It's all about creating a world that nurtures both your need for safety and your desire for exploration.
I have to say this whole exploration of Gray's theory has been so insightful.
Right. I feel like I have a completely new understanding of myself and the people around me.
That's great to hear.
It is.
Yeah.
And I'm really inspired to start putting some of these strategies into practice.
Awesome.
See how I can create that healthier balance in my own life.
It's amazing how much insight we can gain
Right.
just by understanding these underlying systems.
Yeah, and it's a reminder that personality isn't fixed.
Mm-hmm.
It's dynamic.
It is.
And it's influenced by so many things.
By our biology, our experiences, and our choices.
Exactly. By understanding our bias and bias tendencies,
Yeah.
we can really empower ourselves to create a more fulfilling and authentic life.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into Gray's biopsychological theory of personality.
Wow, that went by fast.
It did. But we've covered so much ground.
We have.
And I hope you've all enjoyed this journey as much as we have.
Me too.
And remember, this is just the beginning of your exploration. We'll be sure to include links to all kinds of resources in the show notes.
Yes, definitely.
Including the BizBS questionnaire,
Uh-huh.
if you're curious to see where you fall on the spectrum.
Yeah, give it a try.
So thanks for joining us on the deep dive. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the fascinating world of human behavior.